say the beeping of hospital machines is supposed to be reassuring. To me, it sounded like a countdown.
Not to my surgery.
Not to pain. To the moment I finally stopped caring. The nurse's shoes squeaked against the linoleum as she pushed my bed toward the double doors. My gown clung to my skin. The air felt sharp, antiseptic. My phone buzzed beside my leg, lighting up like a carnival in the dark. 27 missed calls. From Mom. The woman who knew I was here. The woman who'd chosen cake and champagne over the daughter she'd raised. The last text she'd sent was only 3 words. We need to talk. Not are you okay? Not we're on our way. The screen dimmed, reflecting my pale face back at me. I wasn't crying, not yet. I was too numb. But numbness, I've learned, is just grief waiting for an opening. Through the small window in the hors d'oeuvres, I could see a sliver of bright surgical light. My pulse quickened. This was real. I was going under, not knowing if anyone would be there when I woke up. And the truth? That was the part that hurt less than it should have. Because part of me, the quiet, dangerous part, was already plotting what would come after. The nurse glanced down at me. "You've got someone waiting outside?" she asked, casual. I smiled. No one worth mentioning. The door swung open. Cold air poured in, metallic and biting. The surgeon's masked face came into view. I closed my eyes, not to rest, but to see the last image burned into my mind. My sister's grinning face on Instagram, framed by birthday balloons. My mother's hand in the shot, holding a glass of wine. If silence is a weapon, mine was about to be sharpened. I let the anesthesia creep in. Not the surrender of sleep, the gathering of strength. They'd remember this absence. They'd feel it like a shadow in every family photo. Because when I woke, I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to explain. I wasn't going to forgive. Some debts are too deep for words. And mine? It was going to be collected in full in the quietest, most public way possible. When I woke, the first thing I noticed was the light. Thin morning sun filtered through the blinds, striping the white wall in gold and shadow. The second thing I noticed was the silence. No flowers. No cards. No family. A nurse bustled in, cheerful in that brisk, professional way. "How's our fighter this morning?" she asked, checking my chart. I tried to answer, but my throat was dry. She poured water into a cup, handed it to me, then glanced toward the empty chair in the corner. "Your ride's coming soon?" I took a sip, my voice low. "No one's coming." Her eyes softened in a way I hated, pity like a wet cloth draped over my dignity. "Well, we'll make sure you get home safe."
Home.
The word sat wrong in my chest. Home wasn't where I lived. It was the place they could leave me behind without a second thought. My phone lay on the tray beside the bed. 53 unread messages now. The missed calls had doubled. The first was from Mom, time-stamped hours before surgery ended. "We need to talk about the insurance money." Not "how was it?" Not "I love you." The rest of the messages blurred together. Demands, justifications, fragments of drama from the dinner I'd missed. The only one from my sister read, "You could have rescheduled." I set the phone face down. A tech arrived with a wheelchair. As he wheeled me toward the discharge desk, I caught my reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall. I looked like someone mid-recovery, pale, tired, but the set of my jaw told a different story. On the curb, I waited for the hospital shuttle, watching as families pulled up in minivans, relatives spilling out with blankets, hugs, and promises of soup at home. When my ride came, it wasn't to take me to them. It was to take me to my apartment, quiet, small, and, most importantly, mine. Inside, I sank onto the couch, the clock ticking in the stillness. My phone buzzed again, a video call from Mom. I let it ring out. A second later, a text. "Your uncle's asking about you. Should I tell him you're fine?" For a moment, I almost typed back. Then I realized, this was their game. Pretend concern for the benefit of others, while the truth stayed locked in our family's private vault of betrayals. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop. There were ways to make absence loud. Ways to let the world see what they were, without saying a word that could be twisted. By the time the sun dipped low that day, the first step was already in motion. They'd ignored me in my most vulnerable moment. Soon, the world would see exactly how it felt. The first step was simple. I went quiet. Not just ignoring calls, that was too common, too easy to dismiss. I became strategically absent. Social media went dark. No posts, no likes, no stories. In group chats, my name sat there, gray and unread, a ghost in the corner. I stopped showing up to family dinners, birthdays, just because, cookouts. No explanations, no excuses. And yet, I was watching. It's strange how people reveal themselves when they think you're gone. My sister posted photo after photo from her birthday dinner, the one they'd all attended while I was being wheeled into surgery. The captions were glowing, all about family love. Mom commented on every single one with heart emojis, like nothing had happened. That's when I knew. It wasn't enough to just disappear. I had to make the truth visible. I started with Uncle Ray. He'd always been the one relative who called on my birthday without fail. I sent him one message. "Did Mom tell you I had surgery?" His reply came minutes later. "No, what surgery? When? Are you okay?" The ripple began. From there, I reached out to a cousin in Ohio, an aunt in Texas. Each time, the reaction was the same: shock, confusion, a hint of anger on my behalf. And I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse. I just stated the facts. No, they didn't visit. Yes, they knew. No, they never called until after it was over. It was the truth, stripped bare. And the truth is harder to refute than any accusation. A week later, Mom called again, not to apologize, but to scold. "You've been telling people things that make us look bad." I almost laughed. "I've been telling the truth." Her voice sharpened. "You're making a scene?" "No, Mom," I said quietly. "You made the scene. I'm just letting people watch the replay." She hung up. The next day, my sister texted, "Do you have to make this public? It's family business." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "You made it public the moment you posted smiling birthday pics while I was in a hospital bed." Silence followed. The guilt wasn't there, not anymore. I wasn't that kid desperate for their approval.
I was someone else now.
Someone who understood that silence could be sharper than shouting, and absence could be heavier than presence. The thing about family reputations? They're like porcelain. Fine until a single crack forms. And I had no intention of gluing theirs back together. By the end of that month, the whispers had started. The concerned relatives were calling them instead of me. And every time they tried to patch the story, they only made the crack bigger. Exactly as planned. The escalation didn't start with a bang. It started with a post. One photo. Not of me, not of them, but of a hospital wristband lying across my kitchen counter, next to a cup of untouched tea. Caption: "Recovery is easier when you do it alone." Thankfully, I've had practice. No tags. No names. No accusations. But in a family where everything is about image, subtlety is more dangerous than direct attack. Within hours, the comments rolled in. Old friends, coworkers, distant relatives, all asking the same thing: what happened? And the more I stayed vague, the more the speculation grew. By the next day, I started getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. One was my aunt from New Jersey. We'd spoken maybe twice in 5 years. She didn't bother with small talk. "I just talked to your mom. She says you're exaggerating. You want to tell me what really happened?" So I told her dates, times, details. No embellishment, no venom. She went silent for a long moment before saying quietly, "I'll call you back." Hours later, Mom's name lit up my phone. I didn't answer. Instead, I posted again. This time, a photo of the untouched "Get well soon" card a coworker had left on my desk at the office, with a caption: "Sometimes, the people you work with show up more than the people you share blood with." The comments doubled. And now, they weren't asking, they were reacting.
Shock.
Sympathy. Disbelief. That's when the messages from Mom shifted tone. From, "Stop making us look bad," to, "You're twisting the narrative," to, "You're hurting the family." But the thing about hurt? It doesn't start with the truth being told. It starts with the act that made the truth ugly to begin with. 3 weeks in, I got a message from an old family friend, Mrs. Alvarez. She'd known me since I was 5. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she wrote. "I didn't know they left you there. I'll be having a word with your mother." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just whispers anymore. It was a slow, controlled burn spreading through every branch of our social circle. By the time my sister's engagement party rolled around, people were already looking at them differently. I didn't go, but the photos told me enough. Stiff smiles, fewer guests than usual, and comments under her posts that weren't the usual gushing praise. Reputation isn't destroyed in a single blow. It crumbles grain by grain until there's nothing left to hold. And I was just getting started. The sharper turn came with an invitation, one they didn't know I received. A local community group I'd volunteered with for years was hosting a charity gala. Normally, Mom would be front and center, shaking hands and pretending her life was spotless. This year, she wasn't even on the guest list. I was. When I arrived, I made sure to look like I'd never seen a sick day in my life. Black dress, gold earrings, hair pinned back. And I didn't arrive alone. I walked in with Mrs. Alvarez on one arm and Uncle Ray on the other. The same people who'd been quietly calling her, asking why she'd abandoned her daughter in a hospital bed. It was a visual she couldn't control. Word spread quickly. "I thought you were close with your mom," someone said in a hushed tone. "We used to be," I replied simply. Then I excused myself before they could ask more. Let them fill in the blanks. 2 days later, the local paper ran a photo from the event. Me, front row at the auction table, laughing at something Mrs. Alvarez said. My mother's absence was noticeable. The text from Mom came less than an hour after the paper hit mailboxes. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent an email to the gala's organizers, thanking them for the wonderful evening, and offering a $500 donation in honor of the unsung heroes who stand by you when others won't. They posted the thank you on their Facebook page, tagging me. By now, the cousins, the neighbors, the church ladies, they'd all started choosing sides. And silence was never louder than when someone you once gossiped with stops acknowledging you in public. The breaking point came in the form of a voicemail from my sister. Her voice was tight, rehearsed. "Mom's really upset. You've made this a whole thing. You should apologize before it gets worse." I played it twice, then deleted it. Apologize? For surviving alone? For speaking truth without raising my voice?
No.
Instead, I sent my sister a single photo, the hospital wristband from months ago, and a one-line text. This is where it got worse. By the time summer ended, I'd been invited to 2 more community events they weren't included in, both hosted by people they once considered allies. Their smiles in public had tightened into brittle lines. The beauty of a slow, public unraveling is that you never have to raise your hand to push. You just remove your support and gravity does the rest. And the fall had only just begun. Symbolic revenge isn't loud. It's deliberate. And mine began with an auction paddle. The fall charity auction was the kind of event my mother used to live for. Wine glasses clinking, polite applause after every bid. I hadn't been in years. But this time, I made sure I was seated at the center table, surrounded by people she once called our circle. Halfway through the night, the MC announced the next item, a weekend stay at the lakeside cabin my parents used to rent every summer. The place where my mother would parade us in matching outfits for photo ops, then spend the rest of the trip reminding me how I didn't quite fit the image. I raised my paddle without hesitation. The bidding went back and forth, 200, 300, 4. At 500, the other bidder dropped out.
Sold.
A few claps, a few smiles, and one curious look from the mayor's wife. "I thought your family still rented that place?" she asked softly. "Not anymore," I said. "Guess things change." That weekend, I went to the cabin alone. I took photos, sunlight on the water, steam curling from my coffee cup, my bare feet on the dock. Each one captioned simply, "Some traditions are better without the ones who ruin them." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't have to. By Monday, I'd received 3 texts from my sister and one from Mom. "You're being cruel. You know this is hurting us. Take those posts down." I left them on read. What they didn't know was that the cabin wasn't the only auction I'd won that night. Another item, less flashy, but far more symbolic, a handcrafted quilt made by the women's shelter downtown. The same shelter I'd donated to quietly for years, long before they decided I owed them my earnings. 2 weeks later, I attended the shelter's winter fundraiser and donated the quilt back, in my family's name. The director thanked the Hale family publicly from the stage.
People clapped.
My parents weren't there to collect it. That photo, me standing under the banner with the quilt, made it into the local paper. Again. By now, I didn't have to speak for people to understand. The pattern was clear. I was living well, connected, respected. They were absent. It's a strange thing, watching people who once claimed ownership over you lose their grip. They keep reaching, but there's nothing left to hold. And I was about to take away the last thread tying me to them. The final thread wasn't money. It wasn't property. It was the last name we all shared. It had been mine since birth, their stamp on every form, every school trophy, every bill I paid. For years, I thought it was unshakable, part of me. But sitting in the county clerk's office that gray Tuesday morning, pen in hand, I realized it wasn't. It was just ink on paper. The woman behind the glass looked up from my form. Reason for the change? I smiled. Personal. 2 weeks later, my new driver's license arrived. No more Hale. No more shadow of their ownership. I'd chosen my grandmother's maiden name, strong, simple, mine. The first time I saw it in print, I felt the weight slide off my chest. I didn't announce it. I let them find out the way they found out everything now, secondhand. It happened at the bank. I was finalizing paperwork for my new condo downtown when the loan officer, a mutual acquaintance of my mother's, mentioned it casually over lunch with her. She must have remarried. My mother guessed. My sister corrected her. She didn't. She just changed it. They called that night. 21 missed calls by morning. The voicemail swung between guilt and fury. After everything we've done, you'd erase us like this? This is humiliating. You're making a scene. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the shelter a fresh donation under my new name, a name they'd never touch, never claim, never twist. The receipt went up on the shelter's social media page with a photo of me and the director. The caption read, "Our community is stronger when we stand by each other." Within a day, it had more likes than any post they'd made all year. People started asking questions. Not to me. I was untouchable now, but to them. Why weren't they in my life? Why hadn't they been there at the hospital? At the auction? At the shelter fundraisers? And I knew the truth was cornering them in a way I never could. That's the thing about quiet revenge. It doesn't shout. It waits. It lets time and proof stack until the picture paints itself. And when it does, you don't have to lift a brush. All I had to do was sign my name. My new name. One last loose end remained, not for me, but for them. Something that would make sure their version of me, the one they'd controlled for years, could never be revived. That part would happen in public. The invitation arrived in early spring, the city's annual community awards banquet. I'd been nominated for Outstanding Service for my work with the women's shelter. I knew exactly who else would be in the room. My parents never missed this event back when they were still being photographed for the society pages. They'd sit front and center, shaking hands like royalty. This year, I requested my table be at the very front, one row closer than theirs. The night of the banquet, the ballroom glittered with glassware and soft jazz. I wore a deep emerald dress that caught the light with every step. The director of the shelter sat to my left, the mayor to my right. Halfway through dinner, the host took the stage and began the awards. When my name was announced, my new name, there was a brief pause in the room. People glanced at my parents, then back at me. I walked to the stage slowly, deliberately. The applause swelled. Cameras flashed. The host handed me the award and motioned for me to speak. I looked out at the crowd, and directly at my mother. I stand here tonight, I began, not because I had everything given to me, but because I learned how to build from nothing. Some of us are lucky enough to be born into support. Others have to find it along the way. I found mine in the most unexpected places, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no one feels they have to go through life alone. The room went still. I smiled, holding the plaque high. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother's jaw tighten. My father stared at his plate. After the ceremony, people came up to congratulate me. A few asked quiet questions about my name change, my work, my story. I didn't answer everything I didn't need to. The silence said enough. The next morning, the city paper ran a front-page photo of me on stage, the award in my hand, captioned, "Marissa Quinn receives Outstanding Service Award." That photo went everywhere online, on social media, in the lobby of the shelter. It wasn't fame I wanted. It was erasure. The last trace of the version of me they'd tried to own was gone, replaced by someone they couldn't reach, couldn't claim, and couldn't rewrite. I didn't send them the article. I knew they saw it. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't care what they thought. That was the real revenge. Not the award, not the name, not the whispers in the room. It was the freedom of knowing I'd already won.